31, and tonight's meeting will be chaired by Member Tom Dozy. So with that, Member Dozy, you may begin.
Thank you. I would like to welcome the new members to the committee. And with that, we're going to open with the election of officers, and I'll turn that over to Mr. Lyons.
Tom is going to volunteer to do this, but may we have a nomination for the position of chair? John Walsh?
I would nominate Tom Dozy.
Okay. Tom, do you accept?
I accept.
Are there any other nominations for chair? Then the position is closed. Congratulations, you're chair.
Thank you.
Now we're going to do a nomination for vice chair. Do we have anybody who will, anybody who will, would like to make a nomination for vice chair?
I would like to make a nomination for vice chair of John McCoy.
John McCoy, do you accept that?
Yes, I do.
Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, congratulations, Mr. Vice Chair, and thank you both for your service in that way. I'm going to do a quick introduction of everybody because we do have a couple of new members. So in addition to our new chair and vice chair, we have Lance O'Donnell, Jackie Thomas, and Gary Fredericks, who are joining us for the first time today, and we welcome all three of you. The other thing that's at your desk today is a new member orientation manual. This has been primarily put together for our new members, but I provided a copy for all of you because it's the basis by which you guys are going to conduct business. In there, amongst the things you'll find is a document called Rules of Procedure. It's draft, and at your next meeting, we'll be asking you to adopt that by a vote. And the last thing that's important in that, well, there's many things important in that particular little orientation manual, but the schedule of our upcoming meetings for the next year is there. And so I would ask that you all look at that schedule of when our meetings are going to be occurring, and those things that you have that are going to conflict with that schedule, if you can look ahead as far as possible and let us know so that we can make sure that we always have a quorum. Okay? And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. I would like to call the Architectural Review meeting of January 16th to order. Could we have a roll call of members?
Yes, thank you. Member Thompson?
Here.
Member Thomas?
Present.
Member O'Donnell?
Here.
Member Fredericks? Here. Member Walsh?
Here.
Member Poline is excused. Member McCoy?
Here.
And Member Dozy?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I would like to now call for a posting of the agenda.
The agenda was available for public access at the City Hall exterior bulletin board on the west side of the council chamber and at the planning services counter as required by law.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, so moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
And at this time, we have time set aside for public comment. This time is set aside for members of the public to address the Architectural Review Committee on the consent calendar and other agenda items, and items of general interest within the subject matter and jurisdiction of the board. Although the Architectural Review Committee values your comment pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on the items not listed on the posted agenda, but you're welcome to speak for 3 minutes for each speaker. Do we have anyone present that wishes to speak on a non-agenda item?
Checking the Zoom.
If anyone on the Zoom call would like to speak at this point, please use the raise hand function, or the person on the telephone line, you may also unmute yourself and you would have 3 minutes. Mr. Chair, I'm seeing no public comment.
Seeing none? Okay, that time is closed. We will now move forward to the consent agenda or consent calendar. And requesting approval of minutes from December 4th, 2023. Do we have any comments?
And
Mr.
Move to accept as published.
I'll second that.
And Mr. Chair, just a quick notice for those of you that are new, you will abstain on this item because you weren't at that meeting.
Seeing none or no comments, we have a motion to accept the agenda items or approval of minutes. Could we have a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved.
And the motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, now we will move on to new business. The item at hand is a request by Mark Greganti, owner, for approval of a major architectural application proposing construction of a single-family residence and an administrative minor modification application for approval of setback reductions on a .32 acre hillside parcel located at 2444 South Ridge Drive, Lot 15, APN number 510-260-014, Zone R1A. General Plan, Estate Residential. With that, would you like to make a presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as noted, this is a new single-family residence on a hillside lot in the Southridge subdivision. These two images you have on your screen are the renderings of the home as you see it from both downhill and uphill sides. This is the current condition of the existing lot. It's been previously graded, and there has been a masonry wall built on the site at some time in the past. This particular masonry wall will not remain, but there will be new walls installed on the perimeter of the parcel. So this is an image of the dwelling, as you also have in your packets. The renderings, and the one that I would call your attention to is the aerial photo that's looking at this home from above, obviously, and you begin to get a sense of the massing and the way that the home lays out. There's quite a considerable rise in grade to the back side of the lot, and the architect has placed the home close to that back property line as possible, and it does have a front-loaded pool. So these are a bit of the details on the project. It is a 3,580 square foot dwelling with an 895 square foot garage on a 14,410 square foot legal non-conforming lot. What that means in terms of its non-conforming condition is that the lot is substandard in area and in depth. It's an R1A zone. The minimum area for an R1A lot is 20,000. So this lot is legal. It's a legal lot of record, but it's substandard in its area. It's also substandard in its depth. The standard depth for an R1A lot is 120 feet. This lot has an average depth of about 100 feet, so it's short in depth. The minor modification request that's part of the architectural review is the modest reduction in the front and rear yard setbacks and a 1 foot height overage at the front setback. And I'll explain that in a moment. So these are the minor adjustments, and I've taken these as just small screen caps out of the drawings that you have in your packet. Because the lot is substandard in depth, the architect has pushed the home as far back as he can while still maintaining what can be an approvable rear yard setback. So he's requesting a setback from 15 feet, which is the normal rear yard setback, to 13 feet. At the front, the standard front yard setback is 25 feet. And in this case, they're requesting this to be reduced to 16 feet. Now, on a hillside lot, a front yard setback can be reduced to as little as 10 feet. Typically, when you're looking at minor modifications of setbacks, normally you're looking at a 20% max reduction. So the rear yard obviously conforms to that. Because it's a hillside lot, the minor modification reduction in the front yard could be as little as 10 feet. But in this case, they're reducing it to 16 feet, and that's in order to accommodate a wind wall and the front entry feature that you'll see on the drawings in just a moment. The other thing, as I mentioned, that they're seeking a minor adjustment in is the building height at the front yard setback. As you know, the code requires buildings to be a maximum of 12 feet at the setback line, and it can increase at a rate of 1 to 3 to a maximum of 18 feet. In this case, it's a flat roofed house, and most of the house at the rear yard setbacks, as you saw from that aerial photo, is within height requirements. The front yard, however, is about 1 foot high. And we'll get into the findings that are in your staff report, but we find this to be a justified request. There is no impact to the neighboring properties, and it does provide cover and a leading wall at the entry feature. So the findings that are applicable in your analysis of this project are the architectural review findings of Chapter 94.04 of the Zoning Code, the hillside development findings from Zoning Code Chapter 93.13, and the minor modification findings of Section 940601. We have outlined those, all of those requirements or those guidelines and the staff analysis for each one of them. And you'll find in your staff report that we believe this particular project does meet the findings necessary for approval, and we are recommending approval of this project subject to the conditions of approval that are also attached on your draft reso. That concludes my presentation to you. I'm available to answer any questions you may have, and the architect is here in the audience and can answer any questions you may have of him as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyons. Are there any questions of staff regarding the project?
Ken, were there any neighbor communications on this project?
When an application on a hillside property comes in, we're required to notify the property owners that are immediately adjacent. And prior to tonight's meeting, we are also required to notify those surrounding property owners 10 days in advance of this meeting. Those notices did go out, and we have not had any comment from the neighbors.
And I believe within our packet, there was also a letter of approval from the homeowners association as
That is
well?
correct.
Thank you. Any additional questions of staff? Seeing none. Mr. Chiaffi, would you like to make a presentation regarding the project? Okay. No presentation. All right, so we'll open it now for committee discussion. Or do we have any comments from the public regarding the project?
We're going to check the...
To any members of the public who are in the Zoom call, if you wanted to speak on this item, you would have 2 minutes to do so, and you can raise your hand. And we'll give a second for you to do that. For the person who is on the phone call, again, you can unmute yourself and identify that you would like to speak. I don't believe we have any public comment on this.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll open it up for committee discussion. Are there any questions or comments from committee members? Member Walsh?
I'm apologize for backpedaling a little bit here. Ken, I have a question in terms of the height, the formula by which it is calculated. The starting point for the measurement is what?
In this case,
Yes.
because it's a hillside lot and of its area that it has, the measurement is taken from the adjacent grade. So normally when you're measuring height, you're looking at the top of curb plus 18 inches.
Right.
That's where the measurement of height would normally begin on a non-hillside lot. This is a hillside lot, and it is of a size that makes it possible so that the actual measurement of height can be measured from the adjacent grade. And that's what we have taken in our analysis.
And the adjacent grade is located where? Because it would vary in different locations.
In this particular case, the site, as you saw from the images, had been previously graded.
Right.
So it is essentially a flat lot for
Okay.
all intents and purposes, once you get up to the point where the building pad is.
Okay, so the calculation begins up to 12 feet at the point of setback from the top of pad?
Yes.
Okay, got it. And I can keep going. I've just got some questions.
No, please.
Yeah, in terms of the design issue, okay, so these metal screens are kind of intriguing to me, and I would like to know if they move.
Hi, folks. Thanks, James Chiaffi, architect. Yeah, we refer to this as Screenhouse 3. It's the third screenhouse we've developed. The second house was never built, but you may be familiar with Screenhouse 1. It's up at the end of Ramon Road. These are aluminum screens. They're custom designed by Anthony Chiaffi, my son. They'll be cut on a laser or a water jet machine. They're supported at the top by a steel beam that you can see. It kind of looks white in the renderings, and they do in fact move. They're designed for sun control, and they do stack together when they're open, and they do close and they're secured. The owner is not here during the summer, so he wanted to be able to secure them in a closed position when he's not here, and we're pretty proud of them. They're very interesting. They're very expensive, but they're really kind of the whole house. The house is really pretty simple otherwise. I wanted to make a comment too about the setbacks and height. If you really look at the site plan, you'll find that the setback requests are only in 2 points. The front setback goes 50, 60 feet back to the garage, so we have 1 point that's encroaching into the front setback, and same for the rear. We have that one corner that encroaches a few feet, I think 2 feet. The rest of that rear setback is triangulated and goes back to as much as 25 or 30 feet back, and it's there because of the hill. The adjacent property owner is the owner of the lot. He's the one that's going to look down on this house from above. That's his house. He lives up next to Hope would be the east of this house on the top of the hill. If you remember the picture that shows the house from above with the solar panels, that would be his view from above, and he was very adamant that he doesn't want the house too high so it doesn't affect the view from his house, which is going to be put on the market when this house is ready. But I just want to make that comment about the setbacks. We think they're extremely reasonable based on the conditions of the lot. And we used to do hillside houses 30 feet high. I don't know where the 12-foot high, I don't know what's happened to the hillside ordinance, but hillside houses are 30 feet high, and I've done a bunch of them. So I don't know why we have to hold 12 feet at the setback, but we didn't really pay any attention to it when we designed it because of that. But it is what it is. It's what Ken says, so that's what we're going with. Did that answer your question, Mr.
It
Walsh?
did, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Jim, I just have a follow-up question to that.
Yeah, sure.
The material that's used, it's a non-reflective material, correct?
Yes.
The finish on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's mill-finished aluminum, anodized aluminum, just like the windows and doors.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I got a question for the applicant.
Yes.
Hey,
Lance?
Jim, can you tell us where is the tilt on these solar panels? Is it, I assume, towards the south, and that would be towards Hope, or is it towards the
We're
street?
showing them flat, Lance. They're be 5 or 6 inches off the deck. They're flat. I don't want to see them from the side yard, and they'll work just fine flat. Just need to leave air underneath them.
Fair enough. Just going to require more cleaning, but okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think they do. They put a slight slope on them, so when it rains, they wash off. But they're maybe a 1/4 inch per foot. They're not sloped. I don't want to see them. They affect the architecture, in my
Yep.
opinion, and I don't like that. So that's why we put them where we put them.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the applicant.
Yes, please.
Okay, Mr.
Hi,
Chaffee.
Gary.
Hi. Could you talk about the treatment for the exterior wood, how it's finished?
Yeah, it's a natural wood. It's a thermery. It's called heat-treated ribbed wood. It is. It will have a light oil probably to it. It isn't really treated. It's made to be exterior use, and we've used it before. It comes, sometimes comes stained dark or black. This one is going to be the natural color. It looks a little bit like a teak. what it
Since
actually
you've
looks
used
like.
it before, do you have any idea of how long, what is the
So far,
longest
what we've
lasting?
used, everything's held up quite well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's heat treated somehow, and it's called Thermary is the name of the product.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Member Thomas, any questions for the applicant?
None.
Thank you. Member McCoy, any questions?
I'm looking at the materials page, and I see in the renderings, you have a white roof. Is
Yes.
What generally white is, we tone it down a bit? You have another tan
You want? Yeah,
for reflective purposes? Yeah,
yeah, sure.
okay. That's it.
I don't know what we got in our conditions. I haven't read them yet, but
I missed the question. Were you asking about the roof?
Roof color, yeah.
The roofs are conditioned on hillside lots to be of a tan or a beige color.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
normally
still
the
a
case.
cool, there's still a cool roof in terms of their performance,
Right.
but tan or
Good
beige.
question, and that's usually what we do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Member Walsh, any additional questions?
Yeah, just an additional one to piggyback onto the question about the vertical ribbed wood material. It looks, from the rendering, it looks as though the garage door was intended to match that.
Correct.
And is it the same material?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Member Thompson? No questions. I have just one comment regarding the landscape plan. Would be requesting the applicant to add some additional boulders and maybe naturalized plant material on the slope in front of the house, more indicative of what's on the renderings.
I'm sorry, similar to what?
In the renderings, it shows kind of a renaturalized slope
Okay.
on the front of the home, but that's not reflected on the landscape plan, and if they could update that to include more boulders and naturalized plants. I believe that was the intent to.
Yeah, it is, and I usually get involved in that, and I'm
Yeah.
sure
It'll-
I'm sure it'll be adequate.
Okay.
But we're happy to agree with that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any further committee comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chaffee. Seeing none, do we have any further discussion among members?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move approval of this item.
We have a motion for approval by Member O'Donnell. Do we have a second?
I'll
Second.
We have a second by Member Thomas.
And Mr. Chair, I just want a point of information. Are you making a recommendation based on the findings in the staff report?
Yes, based on recommendations in the staff report and the comments that were made by the committee this evening.
Thank you. Member Fredericks?
So in other words, we're including the conditions in attachments B and C?
Yes.
This is based on
And
that, right?
Just for you new members, the reason that I asked that question is you do have to make findings. So if you don't choose to accept the findings that staff has proposed, then you would have to make your own findings. So as you're making your motions, you want to say, I move approval based on the findings. So thank you for that.
Thank you. So we have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And none opposed.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. We would like to open it up to committee members for any comments or questions regarding our overview and committee responsibilities.
Yeah, I'd like to thank staff for doing a really good job on your report. Kind of makes it easy. So keep it up.
Do we have any staff member comments?
Yeah, just briefly, a couple of things. So a couple of weeks ago, I think at your last meeting before the holidays, you all looked at the Starbucks application at Racket Club in North Palm Canyon, and I believe there was a robust conversation, but ultimately it was approved with conditions by the committee. You may have seen this news already, but it was called up by the city council, which they can do under the municipal code. There's a provision where any member of council can call up a decision by any of the committees or commissions underneath the council. And so they did call up for review the decision of the ARC and the Planning Commission to approve that application. So it was discussed at the city council at their meeting in December. No decision was made at the time, but, you know, essentially they were expressing concerns around a drive-through only concept, which I know was also a discussion amongst you all, as well as, you know, some of the lack of outdoor seating or pedestrian access. At that point, the applicant got up and made some commitments to go back to the drawing board and think a little bit about the comments and see what they could come back with. So it was continued to a date uncertain. Ken has been working with the applicants to see, you know, go through some different iterations in terms of how they can be responsive to what they heard from council, as well as the community members who came to speak at that council meeting. And so I think there's some progress being made there on their side in terms of what they would like to present back to council. And we expect that that will likely go back to council at some point in February for a final decision. So we will update you when we know more on that. So there's that item.
Hey, Christopher?
Yes.
Would you, for those of us that weren't here, would you tell me what the cross streets were again?
That was Racket Club and Indian Canyon, or I'm sorry, Palm Canyon.
Okay,
So there's the Del Taco at that corner. It would be sort of the parcel to the west of it, right at the intersection of those two streets. And so it was, as I understand it, part of a larger mall at some point in Palm Springs history that was demolished. It's an odd triangular site, and so one of the arguments that Starbucks was making was that they were constrained by the size in terms of accommodating parking and some of the on-site infrastructure that was needed to support the project. But they were also making other arguments about, you know, their business model being drive-through only in that location, some of the problems that they had at the Sunny Dunes location that led them to close that location. And so I think, you know, they're looking at what works for them in terms of a business model, and council was looking at what works for them in terms of their vision for that area. The other thing that was interesting that council did raise was, you know, through the general plan amendment that we've been undertaking for some time now, our housing element does identify a number of sites in that area as housing opportunity sites. So these are sites that we've identified under state rules that make us look at these things as potential future sites for housing and for affordable housing. So I think there was also a lot of conversation around, does a drive-through only concept in that location work with the long-term vision for that area? And then finally, of course, sustainability goals. So is a drive-through, and it was the original proposal was for 2 drive aisles, 2 queues. For the drive-through, and does sort of having all of those cars sitting there and idling line up with the city's sustainability goals and objectives. So that was kind of the basis for the council discussion. Starbucks is thinking about those items, and we'll see what they come back with.
Yeah, that was another
So,
circulation.
yeah, Ken can maybe elaborate on that a little bit.
It was brought up as a concern that you that this committee had brought up to the applicant, and part of what they're looking at in terms of their revised proposal is, if you remember that layout, the drive-through exit from Del Taco is coming out sort of westbound. Theirs was coming out, or going in the opposite direction. They're looking at reversing the direction of their drive-through, so both will come out and move in the same direction. Yeah.
I don't want to presume where it will go with council, but they are looking at how they can be responsive to those comments. So
I
we'll.
think it's exciting. They read some of our notes and comments, and we feel effective. Okay.
I
well,
do think they're really looking for some outdoor space, if nothing else, for people and a walk-up window so that people can come, buy a coffee, and at least sit somewhere, if not inside. So we'll see, but that's very preliminary. They're still working on it. That's something we've instructed them to look at more, and I think Ken provided clarification to them that not only was that feedback provided from you and the Planning Commission, but our code does also require it. So we'll get there on that issue. Just another update to switch gears a little bit. And so Member Thomas had raised this previously, and I know sometimes the links that we send out with the agendas that are kind of auto-populated by the software that we use to prepare our agendas can sometimes get broken or wonky. And so apologies to those who had difficulty opening the attachments that we circulated last week. But it does lead to an update on some shifts that we're making. Speaking of sustainability goals, as you know, we recently rolled out our new software. It had been called EnerGov, it's now called EPL, and it is our online application filing system. So applicants can file online without having to file physical paper with us, and that has obviously also negated the need to submit hard copies of the physical plans in the sizes that we have historically distributed to both you and Planning Commission in our entitlement review process. We also have direction from our Sustainability Commission and others to start to look at making our boards and commissions and others paperless. So that is a goal that we are working towards. And I see the faces on a few members who I know have been struggling with the rollout of our online application system, and we continue to iron out some of those details. But all of that to say, we are in the process of acquiring iPads for distribution to committee members. And the idea is that we will move to a SharePoint folder that you would all have access to, where we can upload agendas, any correspondence that comes in the intervening period between when we publish and the meetings, rather than sending you all the sort of daily emails that we have typically done, and any other material that we can sort of share with you to give you sort of live access to information as it's coming in. So that is something we're working on rolling out. The idea is we would ultimately transition away from printed agenda distribution to you all, and I know that that's a concern among some members, so we'll try to make that as painless as possible and sort of work on a transition plan that works. Probably start by testing the technology and making sure that that works before we physically stop printing for you, should you want a print copy. But that's something we're going to be rolling out in the next few weeks, so stay tuned on that, and hopefully it starts to alleviate some of the challenges that we have with the links and other things that we've been sending out.
You also mentioned another way to access this material if it couldn't be downloaded. I forget what it was, but you said by going to the city site?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that the SharePoint system will probably ameliorate some of the problems you've had. But anytime that there's a difficulty getting something that we've transmitted to you in terms of an agenda package, if you go to the city's website, at the very top, there's a hyperlink that says calendar. Go to the day that this meeting is being scheduled for, and the Thursday prior, the agenda will be uploaded as a full PDF, the same as what you received electronically, on that calendar. So you'll be able to, it's a second way of getting to it if all else fails.
And those are my updates.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. Any further comments from committee members? Seeing none, the Architectural Advisory Committee of the City of Palm Springs will adjourn to the next regular meeting at 5:30 p.m., February 5th, and we adjourn now at 6:05 p.m.